I'm James Cairns, the Senior Director of Strategic Engagements and Organizational Learning at the Center on the Developing Child at Harvard University. I am excited and privileged to have the opportunity to serve as one of the keynote speakers at the upcoming ISSA Conference. I've enjoyed some really wonderful collaboration with ISSA and its members over the last several years. Our center has worked closely with ISSA and the other regional ECD networks on figuring out the ways that the science of early childhood development can be put to use in varying ways for those who are working on the ECD agenda in their own countries and contexts. And so that collaboration has been a wonderful way in which the experience and insights and strategies of folks on the ground in many different parts of the world and how then this body of knowledge that our center has been trying to get out into the world around the science of early development, and that collaboration has been really fruitful. And so it's a delight to have an opportunity to be with the ISSA community in person. What I am going to talk about is really looking at kind of the next era of where the science is pointing. For the last 20 years, we have been focusing on the importance of early brain development, early experience, the environment of relationships, and this science story, if you will, this story of early childhood development and what's happening in the body and in relationships between caregivers and children has fueled tremendous progress in the policies, programs, and services available for kids and families in many places around the world. The next era of where we need to go and where the science is pointing us is in two directions. First, we're learning more and more deeply about human biology, and that in particular, it's not just about the brain, that our bodies are actually highly integrated biological systems. What's happening in the brain, the way we respond to stress and other factors in our environment, is happening within our metabolic systems, our immune systems, our cardiovascular systems. And so this is a story that's as important for lifelong health as it is about learning and behavior. So that's one part of the new story that we want to tell. The second is we're drawing on ever-growing bodies of knowledge about the direct effects of the built and natural environment on child health and development. And so how do we understand what's happening in that broader environment beyond the environment of relationships, which still is absolutely central, but how is where people live, what they're exposed to, issues of heat and water and green space and transportation and access to things like food and healthcare. All of these things are as important in some ways, and we're trying to bring all of that into the story we tell and how we understand what kids need and what families need to be on a path for good outcomes. And so as we look at the themes for this conference, this idea that there is a kind of ecosystem approach, I think the science is telling us, yes, that's what we need to focus on, and that there are many ways in which that our systems, our policies, our resources are affecting kids and families directly in ways that aren't tied to what we think of as the traditional early childhood sector or community. For those of us that have been in the early childhood community for a while, I think there are a couple of things that the science is pointing to that we need to know, or maybe we knew but didn't really factor into the way we think about the work we need to do. One of these is this idea that our bodies are an integrated biological system. And I think too often we focus on just learning outcomes or just behavior or school readiness. And actually what's happening and that are the programs, the services, the supports that we're trying to provide to families and to kids, there's an opportunity to also see that that same work has effects on other kinds of health outcomes for kids and behavioral outcomes for kids. And so I think there's an important area for us all to understand that this doesn't necessarily mean we have to do different work. It means we can understand that the work we do is having implications and effects in broader areas. And it's a way to bring more people and more sectors into understanding that they have a role to play in this kind of developmental trajectory for kids. When we think about the built and natural environment, there are robust bodies of research and evidence that have sat kind of outside of what we talk about in early childhood, and understanding that in some situations, the quality of housing, the effects of heat or access to clean water, or all the other kinds of kind of environment, as we see climate change issues starting to become more and more important, that these issues could have as big or greater effect on kids' health and development outcomes than the programs and services we're providing. And so I think this is what's pushing us to say we have to start to take this broader kind of environmental lens, and again, not ask them to do something different, but to harness what their work and their responsibilities are in our systems to the agenda of child development. The last thing I'll say here is where people live and what they have access to in terms of support, and what they are exposed to in terms of the things that are creating adverse conditions, are not distributed equally and often are not accidental. And so the last piece of this is we have to take seriously that in all of our societies, there are social, historic, policy decisions that have been made over time that have created inequity in the way that communities and families and neighborhoods and parts of our populations have either gotten good supports and have access to services and all kinds of things, and there are those who don't. And so we have to be serious as we're looking at the full ecosystem and thinking about how our systems are getting more oriented towards supporting kids and families, that within those systems themselves are built in historic patterns of inequity and exclusion and inclusion. And so that's another area, I think, that as we think about how we tackle this work and hopefully transform the way that we're supporting kids and families, that we need to take seriously. As we think about early childhood, there are many folks who sit in parts of our governments, our nonprofit communities, our civic organizations, who might not think that this is their issue. Actually, this is everybody's issue. And there are remarkable ways that those who sit in sectors or areas of work that we might not think of as really focused on young kids, roads, housing, finance, but actually that work has direct implications on the conditions and environments in which kids grow up. And so let's think about ways in which we can bring in folks who are doing things that are absolutely critical to creating positive environments for families in which to raise their children. And if you're in one of those sectors, pause a minute and say, is there some way that my work is actually shaping the ways and the environments and the conditions in which families are trying to raise their kids? And you might be unwittingly a champion for early childhood development. So check this conference out. Think about coming. There are ways in which all of us can be part of the ecosystem that is surrounding families and caregivers and creating the environments that enable children to thrive.